five competitive forces model also considers the downstream competition coming from an industry's buyers, as well as the upstream competition posed by suppliers. Such competition refers to buyers and suppliers' bargaining power, since being forced to negotiate with stronger counterparts forces incumbents to accept the price reduction bargained by buyers or a cost increase imposed by suppliers, both alternatives reducing incumbents' average margin. Let's start considering bargaining power of buyers and its determinants. Buyers, both consumers in a business-to-consumer relationship and companies in a business-to-business one, compete with the industry by forcing down prices, bargaining for higher quality or more services, and playing competitors against each other, all at the expense of industry profitability. The power of each of the industry's important buyer groups depends on a number of determinants, including relative concentration, products' features, and buyers' own characteristics. When it comes to relative concentration, a buyer group is powerful if the following circumstances hold true. The buyer group is concentrated or purchases large volumes relative to seller sales. Should the buyer's business area be more concentrated than incumbents, the industry players may not be able to afford losing one of their relatively few customers. Moreover, if a large portion of sales is purchased by a given buyer, this raises the importance of the buyer's business in results. Considering the purchased product's features, buyers' bargaining power increases if the following circumstances hold true. The products it purchases from the industry are standard or undifferentiated. Buyers, sure that they can always find alternative suppliers, may play one company against another. The buyer faces few switching costs. Switching costs lock the buyer to particular sellers. Conversely, the buyer's power is enhanced if the seller faces switching costs. The industry's product is unimportant to the quality and performance of the buyer's products or services. When the quality of the buyer's products is very much affected by the industry product, buyers are generally less price sensitive. When the opposite holds true, buyers increase their bargaining power and trigger higher competition in the incumbent's industry. Here's a list of the bargaining power of buyers' determinants depending on the purchased product's features. About the buyer's own characteristics, its power increases when the following conditions apply. The buyer earns low profits. Low profits create great incentives to lower purchasing costs. Highly profitable buyers, however, are generally less price sensitive. That is, of course, if the item does not represent a large fraction of their cost, and may take a longer run view toward preserving the health of their suppliers. The buyer poses a credible threat of backward integration. That is, it manages to internally perform those upstream activities and processes they were formerly purchasing from the industry's incumbents. If buyers either are partially integrated or pose a credible threat of backward integration, they are in a position to demand bargaining concession. Buyer power can be partially neutralized when firms in the industry offer a threat of forward integration into the buyer's industry. The buyer has full information. Where the buyer has full information about demand, actual market prices, and even suppliers' cost, this usually yields the buyer greater bargaining leverage than when information is poor. With full information, the buyer is in a greater position to ensure that it receives the most favorable prices offered to others and can counter suppliers' claims that their viability is threatened. The products the buyer purchases from the industry represent a significant fraction of its cost or purchases. Here, buyers are prone to save their resources, so they negotiate for a favorable price and purchase selectively. When a product sold by the industry in question is a small fraction of buyers' cost, buyers are usually much less price sensitive. The buyer's characteristics increasing its negotiation power are recapped here. When considering bargaining power of an industry's suppliers, suppliers can exert bargaining power over participants in an industry by threatening to raise prices or reduce the quality of purchased goods and services. Powerful suppliers can thereby squeeze profitability out of an industry unable to recover cost increases in its own prices. To assess the competition coming from a strong supplier, we must consider that the structural determinants of bargaining power of suppliers are dual to those influencing the bargaining power of buyers we just mentioned. So, a supplier group is powerful if the following conditions apply. It is dominated by a few companies and is more concentrated than the industry it sells to. Its products are differentiated or it has built up switching cost. It is not obliged to contend with other substitute products for sale to the industry. The supplier's product is an important input to the buyer's business. The supplier group is not very profitable. The suppliers pose a credible threat of forward integration. The suppliers were able to protect information about their products and related costs. And the industry is not an important customer of the supplier group. To wrap it all up, the interplay between downstream competition from buyers and upstream competition from suppliers can squeeze an industry's margin when one or both the forces are intense. When we couple the impact of these two forces with the other three belonging to the five forces model, that is, direct competition from internal rivals or incumbents, indirect competition from threat of new entrants, and potential competition from substitute products or services, we can determine the overall competitive pressure an industry is subject to, in turn assessing its average profitability and attractiveness from an external perspective.